A very good Sunday morning to my friends from Brumley Baptist Church. It's Sunday school time, and I pray that you'll have a Bible and your Sunday school quarterly. We are in session number 5, page 46, in our study of the book of Job. And this week, the title is Justice Sought. We have two more sessions in Job after today, and so we're on kind of the downhill slide of our study through Job. But a very interesting lesson today, and maybe a little bit of a different perspective to think about as we think about God's justice this morning. So grab a Bible, grab a cup of coffee, and let's get ready to dive in and study God's Word together. A lot of our study today is going to come from the perspective of a man named Elihu. Elihu has been one of Job's friends throughout this study, and at times has spoken correctly theologically, at times has spoken a little bit incorrectly theologically, but he is dealing with his perspective on the matter, and that's why he is part of the book of Job. In chapter 36, he's going to be spot on in a lot of the things that he says, and he's actually going to rebuke Job a little bit. We may tend to think that since the book of Job has his name on it and how good he is at the start, which is all true, that he always is kind of correct in his thinking, and that's not quite the case. Job is struggling, and with cause. Like, I understand why he's struggling with all that he's faced and gone through, but he still doesn't have it perfectly figured out. And part of this lesson is Job kind of coming to that conclusion and figuring out the justice that God is giving out. You'll note from verse 8 all the way through verse 23 is going to be our text for the day. So if you want to pause the video here and read through that, this will be a good moment to do that for a second to kind of get the full context of what we're talking about. But we're going to dive in 3 sections here today for our lesson. And our first one is going to simply say this: purposeful discipline. Elihu speaking says, if people are bound with chains and trapped by the cords of affliction, God tells them what they have done and how arrogantly they have transgressed. He opens their ears to correction and tells them to repent from iniquity. If they listen and serve him, they will end their days in prosperity and their years in happiness. The ESV says, then he declares to them their work and their transgressions, and they are behaving arrogantly. So he opens their ears to instruction. There are times when God has to discipline us, and it is always, as this passage says, with purpose. God doesn't just punish his children, he wants to discipline. There will be times when punishment will come if we just continually throw off God's discipline or don't pay attention to it or just continually willfully sin. He may have to punish us, and punishment is just bad things are going to happen to us, and that's the end of it. Discipline is, okay, you've done something wrong. Here are the consequences for those sins or those wrong choices. Now do better. Learn from them and change and mold yourself and conform yourself more into what you should be. There is a great difference between God's discipline and God's punishment. And so many times he wants to discipline his children. He wants to change them and form them into what he calls them to be. But we think that if anything bad happens, it's just punishment. Well, no, usually it's discipline. God wants to gently bring us along. Notice he says in verse 8, people are bound by cords of affliction. I love that phrase, and that phrase actually virtually the same through any translation. We are all bound, if we're not careful, with cords of affliction, where bad things happen, and many times we are bringing those bad things on ourselves. We're doing things we shouldn't do. That happens. He says at the end of this passage, if they listen, then they'll have prosperity. And that happens. But I want to make a little note here that just because bad things happen or just because good things happen in every case does not mean that God is either disciplining someone or blessing someone. You know, the worst people spiritually on the planet sometimes experience blessings. They get rich or they get wealthy or they win, games or whatever, the case may be when it comes to the education and coaching world. People that do it the wrong way sometimes win. and coaches that do it the right way sometimes don't. That's part of it as well. So it's not a hard, fast rule. It's a general principle. And the Bible does that many times. Proverbs is filled with general principles. Train up a child in the way he will go, and when he's old, he'll not depart from it. Well, sometimes people that are born in Christian homes still go wild. They still go crazy. It's not a hard, fast rule, but it is a general principle. And that's what we have here with this purposeful discipline. Number two, I want you to think that judgment is coming. Elihu continues and says, but if they do not listen, they will cross the river of death and die without knowledge. Those who have a godless heart and harbor anger, even when God binds them, they do not cry for help. They die in their youth. Their life ends among male cult prostitutes. God rescues the afflicted by their affliction. He instructs them by their torment. Indeed, he lured you from the jaws of distress to a spacious and unconfined place. Your table was spread with choice food. In verse 12 is the second of the two conditional statements of Elihu concerning people's responses to suffering. This statement declares if people refuse to listen to God's instruction by refusing to repent of their sin, they will die without knowledge. If you continue to arrogantly sin against God, eventually that will be where it comes to. Verse 13 brings to light the stubbornness of those who don't trust God and refuse his corrective actions. Godless is what they are called. A godless heart, and so God binds them. In verse 15, the subject changes from those who rebel against God to God himself. This verse encapsulates Elihu's understanding of the reason or purpose of someone's adversities. God rescues the afflicted by their affliction. How are we saved? How are we drawn back to God? The afflicted are saved by their affliction. The thing that strikes us is also what drives us back to God. Isn't that an incredible thought? The thing that hurt Job so much was also what was going to lead him back to the place he needed to be with his Lord. It's an incredible turn of events there, isn't it? The affliction drives us back. Those who are afflicted are drawn back by what afflicts them. Judgment is coming. For the good, for the bad, for all in between. One day we will all stand for judgment before a holy God. How did we respond to this affliction that he gave us in the meantime is what will make the difference. Verse 17 says, yet now you are obsessed with the judgment due the wicked. Judgment and justice have seized you. Be careful that no one lures you with riches. Do not let a large ransom lead you astray. Can your wealth or all your physical exertion keep you from distress? Do not long for the night when nations will disappear from their places. Be careful that you do not turn to iniquity, for that is why you have been tested by affliction. Look, God shows himself exalted by his power. Who is a teacher like him? Who has appointed his way for him, and who has declared you have done wrong? This is Elihu basically indicting Job for his missing the point. According to Elihu, God always gives people what they deserve. Therefore, Job had no one to blame for his suffering but himself. Because Job was consumed with his vindication and justification, he was bearing the condemnation that God gives only to the wicked. We have to remember, the opening chapters of the book of Job indicate that none of Job's sufferings were on account of his sin. So Elihu misses the point here and misses the boat. Job is not getting what he deserves for his wrongdoing. However, in his obsession with getting vindicated, he was wrong. Job was wrong. God doesn't owe us anything. Even if we suffer our entire life, God does not owe us any single thing. Our good works, our good nature, our good actions, none of those things deserve any reward from a holy, perfect God. Look what he says in verse 23. Who appointed God's way? Who are we to tell God what he ought to do? See, even when we struggle and suffer, God doesn't owe us. God isn't required to come back and pay us back for the times that we were good or the opportunities we took to do the right thing. That's not how this deal works. It's not how God's justice works. We need to remember that. And we also need to not long for those who are around us to, quote unquote, get what they deserve. Because thank God he didn't give any of us what we really deserve. What can we learn from this passage today? Number one, believers must examine their own lives for sins. We must be willing to look at our own selves and then rationally say, this is where I'm messing up. This is where I'm not doing what's right. Paul said that in 1 Corinthians. Remember, we talked about the Lord's Supper, and some were sick and some were dead because of their Lord's Supper. He said, if we would examine ourselves, then God wouldn't have to do that. So examine yourself. What's in your life that should or should not be there? There are great consequences for ignoring God's warnings. Great consequences. Horrific consequences for not obeying what God has told us to obey. We better get right, friends. We better get that right. We also need to believe and remember that God is always just. Even when we don't see it, recognize it, or understand it, God is always just. Job and Elihu both kind of missed that a little bit in today's lesson. By the end of the book, we'll see if they come along and come around. Job chapter 40, the first 14 verses will be our text for next week. Power displayed. We're coming near the end of the book of Job, so I pray that we'll see a lot of these stitches come together and create a beautiful quilt of God's sovereignty. Have a good and godly day. We'd love to see you with us at 10 a.m. this morning as we worship together live at Brumley Baptist Church.